Will, you ready to start?
If you'll give me about 15 seconds.
Oh, okay. Fine.
All right, I think everything's good on my end. Would you like me to give everybody the
Yes.
rules of the road?
Yes, thanks.
Fantastic. Welcome, everybody. If this is your first time joining us, or maybe the first time in a long time, we'll give you a few hints on how the meeting will be run, and then we can get going. You'll notice that currently you're muted, and everyone in the meeting is going to stay muted through the duration of the meeting, except for our co-chairs, Chuck and Craig, and any presenters as we move through the agenda. Following each individual presentation and agenda item, the co-chairs will call on members of the public who wish to speak about that item. You can participate by going to the react icon on your device and pressing the raise hand button. It's not the wave or the thumbs up, as those will disappear. Only press the raise hand button once. If you press it a second time, your hand will go back down. If you're calling in from the phone, it's star and 9 to raise your hand, and then star and 6 to unmute whenever you're called on. Be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once one of the co-chairs calls on you. If you're having problems, the chat is available for technical support only to help with the Zoom software. It's not to ask questions of the presenters or the co-chairs. They will never see those chats. If you're using an older version of Zoom, you may need to go to the participants section where you would find the raise hand feature there. And finally, we encourage you not to raise your actual hand or wave at the screen to get our attention. If you're having any problems, just chat me. I'm here for support. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Chuck and Craig, and they can get going.
Thank you. We'll appreciate it. I'd like to welcome everyone to the June meeting of the Transportation Committee, Community Board 8. I'm Chuck Warren, co-chair of the committee, and Craig Later, co-chair. Craig, I didn't know whether you want to say anything in the beginning here?
No, the only thing I was actually going to say is that I think we may want to move up the 96th Street to immediately after the 86th Street item, since it does involve the MTA and they are on at the.
I was thinking the same thing. So, okay. So item 1 is a public presentation by the MTA and New York Transit on an ADA project at East 86th Street and Lexington Avenue. We have some people from the MTA here, and I don't know who wants to lead off here.
Thank you, Chuck. This is Katerina Pachuri here from MTA, Assistant Director of Government and Community Relations for New York City Transit. It's good to see everybody this evening. I'm joined by a couple of my colleagues, Conna Irving from MTA Construction and Development Division, Deborah Howes and Frank Tomaso from ACOM, Chris Alexandrovich from OHLA. That's the project team that's working on this ADA project at 86 and Lexington that we are very excited to present to you this evening. So we're going to get started with a quick PowerPoint presentation to walk you through the project, and then we'll have time afterward for questions and answers. So Kana, I believe you're going to share your screen.
Yes, I am. 1 second.
Let me know if you're having a problem with sharing your screen. Nope, looks like it's going now. Well.
Okay, can people see that? Oh, wait, sorry.
Kana, if you want to email it to me, or if one of your other team members wants to share it, we can do that as well.
Okay, I think that I got it this time.
I think you got it. Yeah.
Suffer from having too many things open at once, just my usual problem. Okay. Okay, can you see the full presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. Sorry about the tech problems. Hello, my name is Connor Irvin. Thank you so much, Katerina, for the introduction, and thank you, everyone, for your time. I'm here representing MTA Construction and Development. We're very excited to come here with updates and a presentation about 86th Street. This is a station in the ADA Package 5. This is the largest design build package that the MTA has awarded to date. We awarded this in December, and this builds on the success of our very first design build package of ADA upgrades that we completed earlier this year. So we're at 4 stations and counting for this year, at 151 accessible stations. So the MTA is well on its way to meet our accessibility goals. Just for some context, I'm sure everyone is aware, but this station does have an elevator, but it is not yet fully accessible. So we're going to be doing a myriad of ADA improvements, as well as some other improvements here to bring this up to code and just make it an overall better station environment. Great. So we have to dive into the project scope. So the ADA improvements include 1 new street to upper platform elevator serving the southbound platform. And we're also going to be installing 2 new upper to lower platform elevators serving both directions. We're also going to be constructing new ADA raised boarding areas, as well as adding platform edge tactile strips along the entire length of the platforms, doing multiple stair reconstruction, and that's the 3 double stairs. We're going to be relocating and reconstructing them to ADA code to accommodate the elevator banks and also improve circulation patterns within the station. And at the end of the final stages of the project, we're going to be installing new curb cuts at street level. For some infrastructure and station environment improvements, whenever we are at these stations, we try to make some light touches that, again, just improve the overall station environment. So that means upgrading the fire alarm system, some lighting and comm systems. Here, when we say communication systems, we mean better comms for rail ops, help weight connectivity, and CCTV cameras. And we're also going to be doing some track repairs to accommodate these ADA improvements that we're doing here. And that means that we're going to be equalizing the height of the train to the new platforms to reduce the gap between the train and the platform so that anyone using a wheelchair or a stroller, those wheels won't get stuck in between that gap. For some station environment improvements, there's some really beautiful station artwork here, some really fun pieces. So what we're going to be doing is we work very closely with MTA Arts and Design, C&D and GCR and the contractor to make sure that any artwork that is disturbed as a result of the construction, it is removed, it is stored. And then when we have that wall space and when we know where we can put that art, we're going to be restoring it and replacing it somewhere else in the station. And in some cases, that means that we get to add some art or change it. But either way, that is something that, we take great care about when we do these ADA improvements. We're also going to be preserving some of the historic features, which is really just some of the mosaic banding at the top of the station walls. So here we have the overhead view of the project. So again, like I said, there's 1 elevator at the station already. We're adding 3 more to make it fully ADA accessible. And the new street elevator location is that small orange box to the left. And then the currently existing one is that white box to the right. And we're just going to flip through some before and after photos, some nice renderings we have from the project team. So this is the street level. This is northwest corner of Lex and 86th. We have our landmark Best Buy here. That makes it easy to visualize where the elevator is going to be landing. And then we have this before and after view of the upper level. So this is the southbound direction. On the left-hand side, you can see that that's one of those double staircases I was talking about. So that will be removed and reconstructed around the elevator. And you can see how we're going to be doing that on the photo to the right. We're going to be keeping the Omni machines. We're just going to be shifting them a little bit. Again, these are renderings or draft designs. So if you don't see them in the photo, it doesn't mean I'm not going to be including those. To the left, you can see that's where the approximate landing of the street to upper level elevator will be. And on the right, right where that man is coming from, that is where the station entrance is. Some more renderings. This is showing the lower level, and that this mosaic banding, that is the historic feature I was talking about. So we're going to preserve that. This is the upper level platform, the elevator entrance northbound direction. And the upper level, that's the local track. Southbound. This is the elevator and the stair northbound. And we have the southbound lower level elevator and stair. Okay, great. So to go into the construction timeline, now that we've seen some of these photos of what it will look like. So currently we're in the phase where we're doing this outreach, making sure that stakeholders are kept aware, coordinating with utility companies, with all the different agencies that we work very closely with at the city, so DOT especially, and just other agencies as needed. And this is of course going to be throughout the entire lifetime of the project. We are constantly coordinating with these different entities. In around, I think the earliest that we could be mobilizing is mid-June, but I'm going to address some asterisks on the slide and talk about why these dates are approximate. And the first visible signs of construction you might be seeing is the barriers that we install that maintain and protect traffic. So we call them MPT. They surround the work zone, and then we set up staging area. So that's just the construction equipment that we are going to be placing there to support the project. After we put up those barriers, we're going to be commencing with the utility work, excavation, demo, and other construction work. And that will be, again, right after we install the barriers until the end of the project, which is slated to be substantially complete in Q4 2026. And to address these dates, so this is the earliest we think we would do this. So we wanted to come to you, although these dates are approximate and we think that they might be moving a little bit. And the reason that we don't have them set in stone yet is, I'm going to allude back to that first slide I was talking about, this being a design build package. And this represents not just us modernizing our physical infrastructure to bring it up to ADA code, and meet the Americans with Disability Act standards, but it's also modernizing our contracting process. So it's the way that the MTA and C&D in particular is delivering the projects better, faster, and cheaper. And we're not doing it the way we used to. We're deviating from the traditional design bid build, where the design is done by a designer, then it's bid out, and then bid it out to a builder who does all the construction. Design build allows us to bring the contractor in earlier in the process and get them bought in on design. It gives us a lot more flexibility. But because of that, we're able to do sort of accelerate both at the same time because they're happening in tandem. But because of that, that's why these dates are approximate. Our contractor submits drawings for design in phases of 30, 60, 90, and 100% completion. So right now we have 60% drawings from them. I believe that we're about to get 90% by the end of June. And that's across all the stations in this package. But that's just why these are approximate. We will come to you when we have more concrete dates. And later in this presentation, you'll see when we talk about some of the service disruptions. Again, just please bear in mind, like, when we do know the exact weekends that will be affected, we will let everyone know. But we just wanted to, err on the side of caution, let you know the very soonest we could do this. Just start the communication on this project. So now we're going to dive into the phases of MPT that I was talking about on the earlier slide. So this is the first one. This is supporting utility relocation, some station mods, and this phase is for the southbound elevator installation and the platform extension that accompanies the elevator. So in this phase, you can see that black box at the very top. That is our staging area where we're going to be putting construction equipment. And for this phase and second phase, we are going to be occupying that right turn lane. That is, very important to have our equipment really, really close to the work zone. On 86th Street, so the 2 travel lanes in each direction will be maintained, but because of the work zone at that red box right there in the corner, we're just going to be curving the traffic around that so that, cars can pass safely. So because of that realignment, we are going to have to temporarily remove the taxi stand for this phase. So just for this phase, we're going to be temporarily removing the taxi stand. However, the M86 bus stop will be maintained, as well as all the pedestrian ramps and the walkways at all times. And besides the right turn lane and parking remove on Lexington, the southbound through traffic is maintained. So here we have our second and final phase. So this phase supports very similar work, station mods, platform extension, but for the northbound elevator. So travel, you can see again, like I said, that staging area at the top that is remaining for this phase as well. On 86th Street, because our work zone has shifted, that means that we're able to restore that taxi stand. However, the traffic on 86th Street will be aligned a little bit differently. So eastbound traffic flows normally 2 lanes right there. On westbound, the traffic will flow normally, but west of Lex. So before that traffic is reduced to 1 lane to give adequate room for the work zone, as well as that temporary sidewalk that we are going to be installing. So when we say the pedestrian ramps and walkways will be maintained at all times, you can see that, our work zone does clearly take up some of the walkway space, but we always create a temporary walkway for pedestrians whenever we occupy that part of the street. And again, the M86 bus stop will remain, and the traffic on Lexington is the same. So that right turn lane is, occupied for staging, but southbound traffic is flowing normally. So some construction and service impacts. So the vast majority of this construction will occur during regular DOT approved hours from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. This project will require some evening work, and that is usually to minimize impact to rush hour traffic. We break the work up into shifts. So if there is work that can be noisier, because we do have some excavation as we're, going to be punching up through the station, and the Manhattan schist is one of the strongest rocks and on Earth, apparently. I just learned that at a construction site. So we always make sure to stack some of the noisier work during the daytime, and we have a bunch of mitigations to reduce the noise. We can use sound blankets, we use enclosures in some cases, but that is still, needs to be finalized. When we have the design, we'll let everyone know what our exact plan is. I know that is going to be very important, especially to this neighborhood, very residential, of course. The evening shift, that's 3 to 11, that is most commonly used to prepare for the next day. So that means cleanup, any sort of prep work, but we are not going to be doing any sort of rock demo during the nighttime. Again, like I said, that access will be maintained to the sidewalk, crosswalks, and the bus stops. We may have to shift the ticket machines in the bus stops just a little bit on 86th Street during construction. We're still in contact with New York City Transit and, just our bus division there. It won't be diverted, it won't be skipped, but we are still in discussion with them. And of course, we wanted to just give you that heads up in case we do have to do that. So during the construction of the elevator, and specifically the platform level improvements I was talking about, most notably the ADA raised boarding areas, the platform tactile edge yellow strips, those will require some limited platform closures, and we do one direction at a time, because we're never going to be shutting down the station fully during construction at all. But you know, you can imagine when we are doing these platform edge tactile strips, we can't have customers entering and exiting the train. The platform is going to be unusable on that side at that point. So we're going to be staggering those, and we'll let you know when exactly those will be. We don't know. We haven't coordinated with operations planning yet, but we are in the works for that. For weekday overnight work, we will be doing, again, short stints 10 to 5. And weekend work, we'll also be doing some short some short weekend outages. When we know what they are, we'll let everyone know. Typically, when we do, for example, when we have to shut down one side for platform work, we'll try to stack as many sort of like repairs as possible during that general outage, so that we're maximizing the number of benefits we're bringing to the customers, and really getting the most bang for your buck, so to speak, when we do inconvenience folks. And we, you know, want to be the best neighbors we can be on this project. So the arts and design component, there's some absolutely gorgeous art here. And again, I said that the mosaic band to the left, that's the historic feature. We work very closely, you know, I facilitate conversations with the arts and design at the MTA, you know, and Katerina. Also, we loop in the contractor there. They work hand in hand with arts and design to make sure that these beautiful artworks, you know, they will be disturbed in some capacity, especially that blue eye we see in one of the renderings that will be moved to make way for one of the elevator banks, but we will be refabricating it. Most commonly, arts and design hires the same exact fabricator to make it look exactly the same. And we will be relocating it somewhere in the mezzanine. And that goes for all the artwork that'll be disturbed. And finally, we have our project team contacts. So you all know and love Katerina, of course. And again, my name is Connor Irvin. There's some familiar faces on this Zoom. I see Michelle and Will. So hello. And you have my contact information. We have Deborah House. We have folks from ACOM and Judlow on the call as well, who can answer some technical questions. And please feel free to you know, take photos, take screenshots of the hotline and the email. Please just note that the hotline is not for emergencies, but if any member of the public wants to call and ask questions, they can do so. And if we don't get you in the moment, then if you leave a voicemail, the PMC team will get back to you within about 24 hours during the weekday or during the week. And that concludes our presentation. And we can now open it up to questions. I will turn it back to Katerina.
Thank you so much, Kana. Thank you for taking us through that. And thank you everyone again for your time and for giving us the time to present this to you. So we can start taking some questions. Let's start with Valerie.
But hold it.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
The questions, Katerina.
Got it.
You throw it back to us. Okay, thank you for the presentation. First, we want to see if any members of the public would like to be heard on this, and I see Elaine Walsh. Why don't we unmute Elaine?
Yeah, and I'll remind everybody, if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment, go to the react icon on your device and look for the raise hand button so that Chuck can call on you.
Okay, Elaine, I think you're unmuted.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I am the president of the East 86th Street Association, and we have been for over 10 years trying to work with the MTA about ADA. So we're pleased to see that something is going to move forward fairly soon. A couple of questions. The north side will be where the ADA elevators are. What's happening on the south side with the entrances there? If you know.
The south side with the entrances.
On both the east and west side of Lexington Avenue, we have subway entrances there. Are you going to renovate those?
There's a lot of things we're doing. I think, Chris, I'll turn it over to you. Chris, I think you're muted.
Chris is, there we go. Found him.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, he's not labeled as anything other than just his name.
Oh, Chris Alexander. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry about that. I was trying to unmute and it said I wasn't allowed to.
Yep.
There will be two staircases. I forget exactly which ones that will be upgraded to ADA standards. So the rise and run of the treads will be renovated to ensure that they are at the proper ADA height, as well as the handrail elevation will also be modified to ensure that is per ADA code standards.
Okay, we also know that there's a lot of asbestos in the subway, and will you be doing the repainting of both the north side and the south side and retiling?
And yeah, you guys won't be able to unmute yourself once I unmute you and you mute yourself back. So just stay unmuted
Sorry
if you
about
possibly
that.
can.
Sorry, I'm so used to muting and unmuting.
It's okay.
We don't intend on impacting any locations that are not directly impacted by our construction. The painted surfaces are not lead containing, but not asbestos containing, but they are lead containing. So we will have proper lead protection when that occurs. The MTA has done an extensive asbestos survey pre-bid, and we will be monitoring any locations where asbestos may be interrupted, that the proper abatement takes place. The MTA has a third-party subcontractor who performs that work. So we have addressed any areas that may be of concern, and we are working with the MTA C&D to ensure that those areas do get abated in advance and in the proper standards.
Okay, and I just want to go back. I wasn't clear. On the south side, will you then be painting and doing and making it more presentable, or are you going to leave the south side as is?
The focus is the elevators and making the ADA path of travel. I would say 90% of the work is focused on the northbound side of that station. So the ADA accessibility will be provided primarily from the northbound side. I can confirm, I don't recall all the scope. I'm responsible for 5 stations. So I can talk to Kana and her team, see if we could provide any information on the southbound side. But I'm relatively certain that majority of the work does focus around the northbound side, where that new elevator is going to be constructed, or 2 new elevators are to be constructed.
And just to add to that, really quickly to answer a little bit more of your question, Elaine, that Chris is speaking toward the construction scope of this project, which is focused on the other side, as he's noting, but we can follow up to see if MTA is planning to do any kind of refurbishing of the tile work or painting in the interior on the southbound side and let you know.
Thank you. We'd appreciate it very much, because it has been a disgrace, the conditions. And if we're doing one side, as you all know, we tried to fight when you gave the easement to the construction of the building on the north side, that we had, asked at that point for the elevator to go down to the express stop. So we're very pleased to see that you now are going to move on that phase. It's very important. And our association would like to be involved with you as you move on. We have some concerns about, on the street level, the protection of the trees and the work that has been done by the association. So I think it will be helpful if we can be in the loop with you in discussion. My last question is the funding for this project already allocated and identified so that you will move forward?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so the congestion pricing that we've won, you probably don't like to hear that, but we're very happy, will not impact this project at this point.
It will not impact this project. It will prevent us from awarding many, many other accessibility projects elsewhere, though.
Right.
So.
Well, life we will move on with and try to work that out with other funding. My final question is, there is artwork there. Is there going to be any other additional artwork included? And if so, how will the community be involved in picking that artwork, since it's public art?
I don't know at the time if we are going to be able to add more art. That's always something that arts and design likes to try to do, if possible, really in any project. I don't think so. It's a very competitive bidding process.
Mhm. I'm aware of the process, yes.
Yeah. So I would hedge to say that there's no public opportunity to weigh in. Katarina, am I right on that? I think it's just a competitive bidding process.
Yeah, I think at this time, we've not had a plan to add additional artwork here just to preserve what's existing and relocate. If there is a plan to add more artwork, we would follow the public art process that you're familiar with, but we can let you know if that's something that's going to happen. At this time, that's not something that we're planning.
But we
Okay.
can say that, there's a tremendous amount of very valuable artwork in that station,
Yeah.
and we're going to do everything, we're preserving it. This week I was in the station taking photos of some of the flying pig, for instance. We want to make sure that all of those pieces are protected. And if, for instance, we're working in that staircase, we're going to make sure that that's protected. And if it has to be relocated, will be preserved during the construction process so that it can be relocated.
That's great. We really appreciate that. My final question, are you going to have wayfinding signs in the? Yes, finally. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine. Next, member of the public, Susan, if you'd identify yourself fully, please.
Hi, I'm Susan Gottridge. I'm also with the East 86th Street Association and Carnegie Hill Neighbors and live close by to the station. I didn't catch if you said you were retiling the station or not. If you are, I'd like to make a request to put in for subway tile versus the square bathroom tile that's there now.
We're replacing some tile where we're doing some construction. Maybe Chris can elaborate on where.
Majority of the tile work is going to be matching the existing tile, but primarily in the locations that we're expanding and modifying because of the or three elevators all happen within the station. Anywhere where we do any construction there and any existing modifications, there will be new tile installed. But the intent currently architecturally is to match the existing scheme.
Okay. If there's any way to put subway tile in, that would be great, if it's possible.
Thanks, Susan. We'll make
Okay, thank you. And thank you for the project. It's great.
Next is Andrew Fine.
Thanks, Chuck. I appreciate the time. And I just want to thank the MTA for listening to the East 86th Street Association. I'm a member, a vice president, and we have been long advocating for this accessibility project, being one of the, I think, 15 most traveled subway stations in the entire system. This is wholly appropriate. And I apologize that I missed the beginning of this call. It's been a chaotic day with congestion pricing, as you might understand. A good day at that. But just two questions. Is this project going to reach both the express and the local level? And what is the timing? And that's just, I'm catching up and I apologize for that.
Yep, so we can go back to the slide with the schedule on there and talk about timing, and then I'll let Chris speak to exactly what platforms are going to be served by these new elevators.
So if you see the diagram on your screen, the first phase is intended to be on the left side in front of Best Buy. Best Buy gets the addition of 2 elevators. There's no way of directly connecting all 3 levels. So the first elevator is going to be a straight to mezzanine elevator for everybody to have access to the mezzanine token booth. From there, you'll be able to proceed down from upper platform level to the lower platform level using the second elevator on that side. To go in the opposite direction, you would use the existing elevator, which already services the straight to mezzanine level. And in addition to the there's an existing staircase there, which is going to be retrofitted for the elevator. That location will provide you access from the upper platform to the lower platform. So all platforms will be attainable. However, you will have to use the specific street entrance, as the northbound and southbound are not interconnected.
And the timing?
Phase 1 is going to start this year. It's going to continue. This is design build, like Hannah had mentioned. So we are designing and rapidly approaching the start of construction. We're looking to mobilize sometime middle to end of this month, progress work until middle of next year, and then jump over to the next side middle of next year, with the intent of commissioning all 3 elevators simultaneously by Q4 of 2026.
Connor, could you, oh, sorry, Chris, Connor, do you mind going back to that slide just in the presentation so people can get a visual of what Chris is describing here? It might be a little easier to follow.
Sorry, yeah, minimizing.
I was just gonna ask, it sounds like you're gonna open all 3 elevators at once. Is there a way to open, if there's an elevator that's already working, is there a way to, just open that elevator as it's ready?
Additionally, when they have shared mezzanines, the intent is to open all elevators at the same time, because if somebody who is has a disability and uses the elevator, they become trapped essentially if they were to come out and not be able to access the street level, for example. In this situation, because the northbound and southbound are completely separated, that could be a discussion point where it's kind of independent, but it does require a significant discussion and signage. Also, if somebody were to use the station, they would not be able to make it back using the same station. They would have to really alter their plan. So it creates logistic issues that I'm not sure anybody wants to really push on to the community, especially since it would be a big altering plan. But we can have that discussion when the time comes. But the current plan and general state of mind, or the mind frame, is that once the station becomes completely ADA accessible, that is open to the community simultaneously.
Well, that sounds terrific. I guess 2 years is a lot closer than we've been in decades. So we really appreciate it and wish you Godspeed.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the board, and I'd like to recognize Valerie Mason, who is our full board chair. Valerie?
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Chuck. First, thank you for the presentation. First question is, can you tell me what the capacity of these elevators are in terms of how many people can fit in them at a time? How many wheelchairs, things of that nature?
Yeah, Chris, is that something that we know, or is that something that we have to check in on at this?
I have to double check. Generally, the elevators are for 1 wheelchair, because one wheelchair requires a 5-foot turning radius inside of an elevator. This entrance is going to be a 90-degree turn. You're going to come in on one side, have to make the turn to come out of the elevator. So we need to account for a full 60-inch 360 radius turn in an elevator. So when it comes to wheelchairs, it is a 1 wheelchair cab. However, full capacity, I believe this is the heavyweight elevator, so it is a 3,000-pound capacity.
Okay, so if you're not in a wheelchair, I'm, Chris, if you don't have the answer right now, I'm just curious, how many women or persons with strollers can get in there at a time, because that's also important.
You can see what the standard rule for these cabs are. Regular able-bodied people, you can easily fit 6 or 7. With strollers, also always depends, size of stroller, and but.
And then I just was curious, what's the speed for the elevator to get from the street surface to the platform?
I don't have that off the top of my head. I used to remember that. There is a specific code requirement for elevators to transverse from one floor to another floor. It's a few feet per second. I can share that information with Kana and Katarina, and they can get back to the community board.
Well, thank you. I just know that, the elevators that are at 72nd Street were of a super fast variety, and it makes it, I don't know. I didn't realize that there was just a standard. Maybe there could be whatever it is. It's just that it makes the ride so much better and easier for people at a quicker speed. So I would advocate for that. And then I think Kana mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that this elevator upgrade and new installation is part of a 5-station package. Can you elaborate on that? Because I understand that this program of accessibility of the MTAs, is really not to be completed. The timeline for completion is 2033. So that hasn't changed, right? In terms of outfitting all of the stations that are not accessible at this moment.
This is, oh, sorry, Anna.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so this is what we call ADA Package 5. So it's part of 13 stations. So it has 13 stations. It's separate from, I mean, it's not separate from actually, it's part of a good piece of the puzzle of total accessibility. So, the more we can award accessibility programs, and I think that our ability to do that has been severely hampered today by today's announcement.
Okay, well,
we won't be able to reach that. I mean, I'm not going to say we won't be able to reach that, but that is a concern. So just think of this as a separate package, though, for the time being.
okay. Well, I mean, just for fact gathering, I believe that the program you're referring to is congestion pricing, but that was only for the 2020 to 2024 period. And I think the total number of stations that would have been covered by the entire congestion pricing plan were a total of less than 25.
Okay, well, yeah, this was awarded for the 2020 to 2024 plan, so that is correct.
So, I mean,
I'm just talking about the other ones that we have yet to be awarded and.
Okay, but the ones that you would award would be part of the 2025 to 2029 or 2030 capital plan. And I don't even think that the financing for that plan has even been considered and where that money has come from. So I just, as a matter of clarity, that's all I want to say. It's not that congestion pricing was funding the accessibility upgrades for over 300 stations, because right now that's about how many stations don't have any accessibility whatsoever. But I appreciate that you're finally getting to 86th Street. We really need it. And I know 86th Street Neighborhood Association is excited, and so are we all. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Valerie. Next is Alita Camp.
Thank you. And thank you, MTA, for your presentation and for taking this work on. It's important, as everyone has said. I just have a couple of pretty simple questions. One is that, will there be markings on the platform to indicate where the doors open?
That's a good question. I don't know if that's something off the bat right now, Chris, but we can double check and get back to you.
I'm not sure it's typical for the markings on the door to be installed anywhere on the platform, but at this station, the ADA area will be highlighted in a approximately 55 to 60 foot area, and it'll be there'll be signage to ensure everyone knows where the boarding area is for that area.
Thank you. I mean, even for people without disabilities, it's really helpful to know where the doors open. There were markings for a while and then they disappeared. It can be useful, especially when it's crowded and that station gets very crowded. My other question is about the bus stop on the south side of 86th Street on Lexington Avenue. It's used obviously by all of the Lexington Avenue buses. It's a limited bus stop. It's also used by the Jitney and by some express buses and charter buses. And I'm wondering if the work zone on the north side of 86th Street will affect that, or if the work zone that you're working on the southwest corner of 86 and Lexington will affect that also, because it can get pretty congested with the buses and people waiting on the narrow platform for them. I mean, the narrow sidewalk.
Right now, we're working with DOT and New York City Transit bus operations. The intent is to maintain that bus, even if it's shifted 50 feet over to just separate it from the construction zone. The idea right now is to maintain it at all times.
Yeah, that's the problem, is that if you shift it 50 feet and you have all of those buses trying to use an even smaller space, it will it will cause problems with buses. I don't know what they do when they can't fit into the space, but there's timings for the jitneys and the express buses and the regular MTA buses. So I'm just raising that as something because it can get really crowded there. And my last point is that the art by Peter Siss, one of my favorite children's book writers, is fantastic, as you pointed out. I'm so glad that it will be preserved and moved, but I would encourage the MTA, if possible, to consider other art. I know plenty of stations have a huge amount of art, and the CB8 has an arts committee, so we're, I think, fully in support of public art in public spaces. So thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Alita.
Okay, thanks to the group. Next is Rita Popper. Can we unmute Rita? No, she is unmuted. Good.
I'm not going to repeat. First of all, thank you. This is an incredible project and very, very welcome. I have a question. That it is such a very busy station at Lexington Avenue. Do you talk to the police department about having a police presence on the platform while this construction is going on?
So we do have regular liaisons that work with the NYPD to station officers throughout on platforms. I don't know if there's specific plans to have them here for construction. There are times that we specifically have NYPD officers on site at the street level to help with maintaining pedestrian safety. But like I said, there are NYPD liaisons and officers kind of going throughout the system regularly.
And second question, I worked on the 2nd Avenue subway with the MTA, and the elevators have been really maintained beautifully. 86th Street and Lexington Avenue gets a lot more traffic. How do you plan to maintain the cleanliness of the elevator?
Yeah, so this is a high traffic station, as you know, it's important to our system. We have regular cleaning and maintenance schedules that's specific to the elevators in general and elevator cabs. Our station managers check those routinely, especially during the night shifts. So that's a plan that is regularly followed daily by supervisors and will be the same in place for these new elevators as well. So of course, we want to maintain all new infrastructure and the existing infrastructure and make sure that it can run for the whole length of its useful life. So that's something that our station managers take really seriously.
Thank you.
Appreciate the 72nd Street kudos. I was actually on that project. I built it earlier in my career.
Thanks, Rita. Next is Michelle Birnbaum. Can we unmute Michelle?
Yeah, thank you, Chuck. And thank you, MTA. We're all in the area and everywhere really delighted that this is finally happening. It's very much needed. So thank you very much. A couple of questions about the construction. Number one, at any time, will you need to actually break open the sidewalk or the street in order to move wires or whatever you might need to do?
Chris?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the question is. We have to modify the existing station infrastructure and provide a shaft from that mezzanine level to the street. So there will be a need for excavation on both sides of the intersection to accommodate those structural steel modifications as well as the shaft modifications, and for the shaft so that the elevator can travel from street to mezzanine level.
So because you had that north side as a staging area, so is the street that you're breaking up, I'm differentiating between the sidewalk and the street. If you're breaking up the street, will it be within that fenced off staging area? I'm really asking at any time, do you have to close the westbound lanes?
Could we go to that slide while we answer this, just to make
I
sure?
saw how you made a little turner, a little veering off in order to get around the staging area. So I'm asking if that's the extent of what you'll have to do. Those two westbound arrows, so that the breaking of the street will be within your staging area and traffic will always be left open.
So during this phase, you can see that the 2 lanes in both directions are maintained throughout this phase. In phase 2, the travel lane heading westbound will be narrowed down to 1 only through the intersection. Connor, if you can switch over to the next slide. To accommodate pedestrian flow and to ensure that the intersection and the sidewalk is maintained, the traffic eastbound heading west will be narrowed to 1 lane, but restored after the intersection.
Right,
eastbound
I
and westbound
understood you to
traffic
say
will be-
that. So it'll only be 1 lane east of Lexington Avenue, and after you cross Lexington going west, it'll become 2 lanes again. But those lanes will curve or veer a bit to go around your work area, correct?
Correct. There'll be a east of the work zone. There will be a merge within the block, and then the street will reopen back to the 2 lanes of travel. So there will be a small bottleneck at this area, but only during the second stage.
And
Okay.
just to make sure this is clear in response to your question, the excavation is happening in the work zones and not in the staging area.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes, that is correct. Sorry.
Okay. Now are you using jackhammers or blasting? How are you doing your demolition?
No blasting. It's not a method that we are allowed, but it's not a method that we want to use, especially close to so many residential and business areas. The main methodology that we're intending on using right now is rock drilling and splitting with some jackhammering to break up loose debris. So that is what we are currently looking into. It is what we plan to use. So essentially during the daytime hours, we would be drilling, splitting rock, and doing some light demolition to clear any of the Manhattan schist when needed or where needed.
And at any time when you're doing that, is mitigation going to be necessary for the building that's on the Best Buy building and those buildings that are on that corner?
As a preventative measure, it is common practice for us to install noise mitigation as well as vibration and settlement monitoring for anything that's within the influence line. Well, the construction is taking place within the footprint of the MTA structure, so impacts to the adjacent buildings are minimal, but it is common practice. If you look at the southeast corner next time you guys are out in the neighborhood, there is some sound monitoring equipment already installed, taking baselines, and it'll be tracking us during construction to ensure that we're following all the state and city regulations for noise. And there will be at a later time in the near future the installation of some vibration monitoring just to ensure that the safety of all the adjacent buildings is maintained and that there is no impacts to the adjacent structures.
So to this structure, do you need a contact person in that building? Do you go into it to do inspections in terms of any possible damage to the structure, not only noise?
So we are in direct contact with the building, both the residential component and the commercial component as well. As Chris said, the construction is within the MTA structure, so we're not anticipating any work will impact the structure of the building, but we are going to continue to monitor the impacts of the work during the work to make sure that that's the case.
Yeah, because even though it's within your footprint, the vibrations can be damaging, but as long as you're monitoring that. Also, are you doing rodent control?
You mean pedestrian safety and sort of?
No, rodents.
Traffic
You're
management?
blasting, you're going, you're not blasting, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Rat control, rodent. Abatement. Are you doing any rodent abatement?
Yes, we do vector control throughout all of our work areas, storage areas, and throughout any areas that we take over within the station.
Okay, last question, and I thank you very much. Can we assume that there will be crowds? In other words, as this construction progresses, there'll be bottlenecks. How will you monitor or mitigate crowd? How will you handle crowd control?
So I think this maybe goes to a little bit what I thought you were asking about before, which was the pedestrian safety management and traffic management. So, Chris, I don't know if you have details on that yet. It's something we work with DOT on, to make sure that it's in place for particular phases that have impact. And then also for pedestrian, site safety, we have signage that goes up to kind of help wayfinding and things like that.
But you said that this is going to be open. There's no time that you're actually shutting the entrance. Did I understand that correctly?
No, sorry, I said that the station won't be fully shut down. It's not like it's going to be closed entirely.
Can you clarify further?
When we're working on the first elevators in phase 1 for the mezzanine to platform and then the upper platform to lower platform, the staircase at Best Buy will be shut down. The MTA has strict guidelines and closures milestones for us. So that staircase will be shut down for 6 months. In that time, prior to the shutdown, we will be posting signage and information, alerting the public that that entrance will be closed to use the other one. At that time, maybe our crews will help any of the public make it to the other entrance on the south side of 86th Street. But prior to any shutdowns, there will be signage installed, any other mitigations as needed. When we do set up to the site at first time, there will be police agents and traffic agents to help guide through the intersection as this construction is first setting up. So we intend on, being that good neighbor and helping everyone out. So yes, it might be slightly more congested on the south side as the public will be utilizing only that side. But again, that stair closure is only limited to 6 months before we're contractually obligated to reopen it.
Now, there's also the addition, you're referring also that will be closed, not only the entrance on 86th Street, but the one that's on, well, no, it's on the west side of Lexington Avenue. I'm sorry, that's the one you're referring to.
Yes.
Within the footprint of the Best Buy, there's two
Yeah,
staircases.
the west side, right, okay.
Yeah,
All
those will
right.
be temporarily shut down.
So I'm sure there will need to be some pedestrian control as people go in and out. That's a very, very busy station all day, not only rush hour. But
Michelle, I go into that station every day and I go by the Best Buy. I'll have to you have to just cross the street to get to the staircase.
No, I understand that, Chuck. I was questioning the amount of people. Now it's split between two entrances. It'll now be one. Anyway, my questions have been answered. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Michelle.
Now I'd like to recognize first Sebastian Clark, who is a new board member, and welcome to the committee, Sebastian. We're glad to have you. And you're unmuted. Why don't you ask a question, make a comment, or whatever?
Excellent. Thank you, Chuck. And a big thank you to the MTA for the presentation. Really appreciate it. The costs of these construction projects I know can be very large, and each dollar we spend on an individual project is a dollar we can't spend on another project somewhere else in the system. Is there anything you could do to reduce the cost of this project so that we can stretch our dollars further across the system?
I mean, the project has already been awarded, but like I said, design build, that's the new innovative contracting method that construction and development is using. And it actually does get us a lot of elevators for a reduced cost rather than our traditional means of contracting them. So this is in itself a cost containment measure.
Yeah, I think that it's a good question. And I don't know, Sebastian, if you caught the beginning where Kana kind of broke down in more detail the nature of this design build package, but that's exactly why we're trying these new methods of contracting in order to exactly kind of meet that goal.
And the other thing to add is that as we bid for these projects from the construction side, we do compete against our competitors to provide the lowest price. And that is also by finding alternate schemes to lower cost, saving on schedule, as well as mitigating other cost impacting factors throughout the construction process. So just the bidding process in itself is very, for us, tedious, but it does get the best bang for the buck.
And
It
it
also
also,
mitigates the ability for us to get change orders where the previous system, any errors would provide the contractor with additional change orders, etc.
yeah, it also includes the maintenance, right, Chris?
That is correct. In this contract, in the cost, the elevator manufacturer and installer is also the maintainer for, I believe it's 15 years with an option for an additional 5.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Sebastian.
Right.
I think,
Yeah. Chuck, before we go to Rita, I would like to just chime in.
of course, anytime.
All right. Well, I too would like to thank the MTA for this presentation. As I'm sure you know, Community Board 8 had some very strong language in our resolutions when you came to us with the northbound local accessibility improvements back probably 8 years ago or so at this point. And we were all very frustrated that it was only on that single platform and that it wasn't all being done comprehensively. So we're really happy to see that our community board was hopefully influential in some way to move this project along and to get the MTA's attention that this should be and was a priority project. So we would like to thank you for that. There was a comment that was made about the phasing in terms of when you may be able to start operating the elevators. And to my original point, remember that original project was done so people would be able to access the northbound local platform only, and they would not be able to return to the subway. So along those same lines, I think the sooner that we are able to get any elevators in place, the better, even if it means that we're providing full accessibility on the northbound side before anything happens on the southbound side, or if it means that we're only getting local access on the southbound side before connecting to the express platform. I think that should be a priority, and I would again ask if that could be considered.
We can definitely look into it.
All right, appreciate that. Thank you. Going back to the to this screen that you are showing right now, and this may be more of a question that brings in New York City DOT, but Community Board 8 has expressed its the importance of daylighting at intersections. And I want to know whether there is any opportunity to move that staging area back further to the north, because if depending on what type of equipment and the height of what is kept in that staging area is in place, I fear that it could present a dangerous situation for pedestrians that are crossing at that intersection, especially those who are crossing east on the northbound side of 86th Street, whose visibility may be impacted by that staging area.
Well, in recent projects, this has actually come up multiple times. In Williamsburg, the project that I just finished, which was actually package 1 for 8 stations, accessibility. We have normally you would see those green mesh banners installed around these areas. What we've been doing is lately, when a storage area is in close proximity to an intersection, we are removing the green mesh so there is visibility to the street for pedestrians as well as drivers, and ensuring that there is no heavy or large or very tall equipment stored in that area so that visibility is maintained. And that's something that we've been coordinating with transit as well as DOT to ensure that that specific situation doesn't happen where that visibility is hindered.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. Again, I would still request that you look into possibly moving it back as well to provide that additional visibility, but I am pleased to hear that you do have those precautions that are being taken and that is now hopefully part of your standard process for these. I just want to go back to that again, the same at the same location. Given the situation, what I don't know if there's any consideration that could be given to perhaps eliminating the right turn lane temporarily from southbound Lexington onto 86th Street. Again, just for the purposes of preventing potential interactions with passengers, especially when you have a staging area over there. So I'd like to put in that as something to consider as well.
I said, we're still coordinating and working with DOT. Just because the staging area is currently in that lane doesn't mean that DOT will cancel the turning lane. The turning lane may be shifted into the bus only lane at the time, but we're still working with the MTA and DOT to finalize that intersection configuration.
Yeah, and at least in my opinion, I would not like to see the bus lane compromised. If we could then go back to the question of pedestrian access. So you had mentioned that the Best Buy staircase will need to be closed for a period of time during the construction. Are you referring to the entrance on Lexington Avenue, the entrance on 86th Street, or both?
They
Because
both
they're separate
feed down
staircases.
into the common staircase, so both will be impacted during construction.
All right, and there is no way to allow for the Lexington portion of it to remain active?
Unfortunately, if you earlier in the presentations, kind of shared the schematics, that existing staircase is actually being shifted over, so that wall is
Oh, okay.
the elevator actually goes through half the stair, but the stair width is maintained, so the entire stair shifts over. So there's actually quite a bit of structural reframing required to maintain that width of staircase, but also provide access and the elevator. So this is actually the slide. That elevator is about 10 feet wide, so it eats up about 3/4 of that existing staircase. So the wall where the artwork, which is going to be relocated and moved over, has to be reconstructed to accommodate the elevator staircase combo.
Okay, no, that makes sense. Again, I would go back to the concerns that were raised about maintaining crowd control, because if the southbound access is only going to be on the south side of 86th Street, that is a single staircase sort of that similar to what you're showing there, that essentially capacity is going to be reduced by half, and it already does get crowded at times. So I would hope that there are strong crowd control. There is strong crowd control that is in place. Same thing, just to make sure I understand, the internal staircases as well, I assume those are going to have to be closed while the elevators between the local and express platforms are installed, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So in those cases, passengers will be directed to the other side or the staircases that are further down in either direction.
That's correct.
Okay. Again, that's not as much of a concern as the access to 86th Street itself from the southbound platform. And then I was also going to ask about any additional improvements that could take place, but I think it's clear based on the news today that anything that goes beyond the most critical needs of the MTA probably are out of the picture right now, which is a shame. As I was also hoping we would see more general rehabilitation as part of this, but I assume that is not going to happen and is now probably not in the pipeline. So I think that's all for now. So thank you.
Okay, let's see if we can finish this up. Rita Popper again wanted to say something. Can we read it?
Is a motion needed? If it is, I'd like to make a motion to accept the plans of the MTA for the northwest corner of 86th Street and Lexington Avenue as presented.
I don't know that we need a motion. I mean, the plan is there, but if you want to make a motion, it's fine. Is there a second?
You can just use a thumbs up emoji if you want a second. And Katerina, do you guys need a resolution for PDC or anybody?
Yeah, thanks for that, Will. I don't believe we do, but I can let the community board know.
Well, if we're here, if someone seconds it, we can vote on
Valerie seconding it.
it. Okay, Valerie seconded. Okay, why don't we, is there any, let's hear from Alita. Alita, do you want to say something before we vote?
I did. I just wanted to reiterate, and please forgive me for taking up the time, the idea of crowd control. I use that station. I use it at rush hour. I use it on the weekends, and it is always crowded with all the assortments of things that people have, plus all of the people with the crosstown buses and the express buses and the limited buses. And I don't know if you're planning to have cameras or MTA officials there, but we really need some help, I think, during critical time with people on the staircases. There's not a lot of room for people going both up and down, both internally and the ones up to the street level, as well as the platforms. That's all. Thank you very much for letting me speak on that point.
Yep. Thanks, Alita. And just to note that we're going to take these notes back in terms of the how we're managing crowds and wayfinding and all of that. We have our stations team and operations team studies these things very closely. So we're going to take all of this feedback back to them. And thank you everyone for your time and for all of your helpful questions and comments on this.
I appreciate
Okay, so why don't we take a vote on this? And
Here, let me just read the roll.
Greg, to see who's here.
Yes.
So we have everybody.
Yes, it's myself, Chuck, Alita, Barbara, Gail, John McClement, Lori, Michelle, Paul, Rita, Sebastian, Valerie. Did I miss anyone who is a member of CB8?
Okay. So if you want to vote yes, you don't have to do anything. If you want to vote no or abstain or not voting for cause, so please raise your hand. I don't see anyone. Do you see anyone? So I think that's unanimous, and we thank the MTA. And I know this is something, as Craig said, that we wanted to see happen for a long time, and it's great to see it being implemented on a reasonable schedule. I think we have, if the MTA folks can stay on, we could, because item 4 is, Craig mentioned before, it was a continued discussion on the proposed 96th Street bus lane, and we had some discussion of it before, and I think we're going to have further discussion here. Craig, did you want to speed that up a little bit?
Yes, and from the MTA side, New York City Transit, I don't think everyone is needed. I think Katerina, I think you may want to stick around for this. And Colleen, I know that you were the one who reached out and said that there was a request for a resolution in regards to the 96th Street bus lane improvement project. So I just want to revisit that discussion so we could hopefully come to a conclusion of it. So I don't know, Katerina or Colleen, if you want to comment on anything involving that process, or anyone else from the MTA or New York City DOT.
I mean, it's Colleen from DOT. We work very closely with the MTA on a lot of the bus projects. And I know when we presented this project, the community was concerned about the data that we provided. And again, a lot of the data that we provided, again, we work very closely to get that information with MTA, and we consolidate that information. In all honesty, I mean, we think this is a great project. We want to move forward with it. And I know the community board was not pleased with us in the past when we presented other projects and we did not come before the board to give presentations, and that's something that I raised with my colleagues, and we're looking to change that. So that's pretty much what I have to say.
All right, well, thank you, Colleen. So
you want to think about this? Is that the resolution on this here then?
well, someone needs to put forward resolution. I also know that there are some people that may not have been here for the last meeting, so I'm not expecting anyone to be able to do a run through of it. I don't know if Colleen or Katerina want to provide an overview of it. I could provide an overview of it as well. I provided extensive detail in the committee minutes from last month, so there's a lot of information there. The presentation is on our website if anyone wants to see. But essentially, it was a project that was going to provide for a bus lane along most of 96th Street, based on wherever it was possible to put it in. So there were certain blocks that we're not going to have those. For example, 96 between Madison and 5th, we're going to be unimpacted. There was not going to be a lane between 1st and 2nd because of the route of the M96. One of the elements of this was that it was not going to have any impact on any parking, because they were going to be offset lanes, offset bus lanes generally. It was obviously intended to help speed up the service on 96th Street, which along 96th Street, you have both the M96 in our district, and the M106 also operates along portions of 96th Street, though I believe that's not necessarily in our district. But combined, it comes out to be the third highest bus ridership crosstown corridor in Manhattan, with nearly 15,000 passengers, and it has some of the slowest bus speeds. And that was the justification for the project, as stated by as from the presentation.
You did a great job, Craig.
We have a couple of comments. I see Andrew Fine wants to comment, I assume, on this. So can you, Andrew?
Thanks, Chuck. I just wanted to point out on our previous conversation regarding the 96th Street bus lane proposal that DOT misrepresented their social media outreach, where they had claimed on the previous call that they had reached out on social media to advertise this discussion. And in contrast to, say, the First Avenue Tunnel for a bike lane by the UN, which they put on social media several times in order to gin up support for it. I'm just pointing out a fact that I went back and I looked at Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, and there was no social media outreach on the part of DOT, despite my contention in the previous meeting. I was immediately shut down as if there was an outreach, and there wasn't. So I would appreciate in the future, if they're going to put social media out there on proposals, that they do it in an equal fashion that applies to bus lanes just the same that they love to promote expanding bike lanes. Thank you.
Valerie Mason, who is next? Valerie? Go ahead, Valerie.
Sorry. Hi, sorry, it took me longer to Craig, on the 3 heaviest traveled crosstown or routes, what were the other 2? I'm partly curious for my question.
I believe they were the M86 and the 86th Street and 34th Street.
Okay.
Not 34th, 14th, excuse me, 14th, not 34th.
Okay.
But
yeah.
I was surprised to find out that 96th Street did have more bus activity or ridership activity than 34th Street or 42nd Street or 57th Street.
I'm just wondering, and I don't think the MTA has an answer for this, or bus, whatever it is. How do the speeds compare to 79th Street? Because my sister takes the crosstown bus on 79th Street, and since our last transportation meeting, she's been timing how long it takes to go from York and 79th all the way to the west side. And her routes aren't taking more than 11 minutes. I mean, so I'm just curious why 96th Street would be so different.
Yeah, that's not something I could speak to right in this moment, but I think last time that we were here presenting on this, we had members of our bus planning team on, so we can go back to them and ask for that data or that comparison.
Okay. And
Right.
then the second thing was, sorry, Craig, I understand the community board 7 on the west side was against the 96th Street bus lane when it was presented to them last month or a couple of weeks ago. Can you just share with us what their reaction was to it? If you
Valerie, I was at that meeting and the community board 7 is not against the project.
Okay.
So yeah, they're supportive of it.
All right. Well, that's what I heard at the borough board. So, okay.
Okay. Well, I was at the meeting.
Okay. I'll talk to the chair there.
Okay.
Maybe it was like board 5. They don't know who's on first.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Very good, Chuck.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But thank you very much.
I was just going to say, just based off of what was presented, the reason that I think 96th Street is so vastly different than 79th Street is it's just a much more heavily trafficked street. I actually went and looked at the AADT data, which is average annual daily traffic, to see what crosstown street traffic was like. And 96th Street blows away all the other major crosstown streets within our community districts. So that, of course, without a bus lane, creates a lot of congestion issues. And of course, 96th Street is more complicated because you do have the turning movement of the westbound trips onto Madison. So they've already put in some bus infrastructure there to speed things up. And then, of course, with the FDR Drive being the major contributor to traffic there, that creates traffic up and down.
Okay. I mean, I'm just, thank you for that. There is no real bus lane on 79th Street, but the redesign certainly helped it move, I think, much better than it was in the past. So,
Yeah, New York City Transit did and DOT did do a presentation, I thought, at some point, or presented us with some information about the improvements after they put in some of the lane improvements on 79th, and it did show some improvements.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Valerie. Michelle? Can we unmute Michelle?
Yeah, my recollection about discussions when bus lanes go in is that they save about a minute or two from the start of the route to the end of the route. To my mind, they cause congestion because if you take a look at Lexington and some other streets, because other traffic has to be out of the bus lane, the traffic gets narrowed or pushed into the 1 or 2 lanes that are available. And the going east on 96th Street, east of 3rd Avenue, is what gets backed up particularly much because it's for the entrance to the FDR Drive going north. And of course, the exit of the FDR Drive comes out at 96th Street. However, you also have an option to go west on 97th when you exit the drive. So I'm not a fan of this conceptually, and I don't think we've examined it enough, and I would hope that we don't have a resolution on it tonight. Thank you.
Well, we'll see. Okay, Sebastian is next. Can we unmute Sebastian?
Thank you. I didn't attend the previous discussions on this, but I've looked over the presentation and the minutes, which are very comprehensive minutes. I appreciate those. Just have a question here around enforcement of the bus lane. So I'm looking out my window now and I can see a car that is blocking the 3rd Avenue bus lane. It's been parked there for about a minute. And we know that bus lanes are not effective for anyone if they become a parking lane. I'd love if any of the DOT or MTA people here could speak to how this will be enforced and whether we'd be able to get any of those automated enforcement cameras that are mounted on the buses to ensure that the bus lane flows well and that the majority of people who get around our neighborhood using public transport are able to get to their destinations quickly.
Yeah, so a lot of the improvements that we're working with the MTA, there are going to be enforcement mechanisms involved where, you know, a lot of these buses are going to be equipped with cameras. So that's something that we're looking at, you know, installing, or well, at least working with the MTA to install that. So yes, there will be some form of enforcement mechanism involved with this project.
Just echoing what Colleen said, it's the we call it the automated bus lane enforcement cameras.
Yeah.
Excellent. Looking forward to that. Thank you.
Barbara Rutter. Barbara? Barbara?
Barbara, you should have the ability to unmute. I'm gonna guess that she may have walked away from her device.
Oh, okay. All right. Is there motion on this that anyone wants to offer at this point about the 96th Street bus lane? Nope, I don't see anyone.
If I could offer a resolution, I'd like to. Yeah, I know. I didn't know if chairs typically do it, but I would put forward a resolution to in support of the M96, the 96th Street bus lane.
There a second on that?
Paul did.
Oh, I see seconds. Okay. And Sebastian, any further discussion on this? Why don't we, do you need to call a roll just to make sure everybody's still here?
Yep, let me do that. So it's myself, Chuck, Alita, Barbara, Gail, John, McClement, Lori, Michelle, Paul, Rita, Sebastian, Valerie. It's the same 12.
Okay, good. Okay, so if anyone wants to, if you want to vote yes, you don't have to do anything. Anyone who wants to vote no or abstain or not voting for cause, please raise your hand. And then I see Alita Camp. Come on, you Alita. That's her hand.
I wasn't here for the presentation, so I don't feel competent to vote.
Well, you want to abstain? I mean, you know.
No, I think you should just take me off the list because I don't think I should vote either for or against or abstaining. So pretend I'm not here.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Michelle?
No.
Okay. Gail Barron?
No.
Anyone else? No, oh, Valerie, sorry. Go ahead.
You didn't miss me, Chuck. I couldn't find the button. I'm going to abstain. I'm not sure.
Okay, fine. Okay, so I think we're done with that, and we thank the MTA for the presentation and for staying around for this item. And we'll go to our next item, which is item 2. Public hearing, 177 East 64th Street in Lexington and 3rd Avenues. It's a revocable consent application to construct and maintain and use a fenced-in area with steps at, as I said, 177 East 64th Street. Is there anyone here to present on that application?
Yeah, if you're here to present this application, please either raise your virtual hand, wave the screen, chat me. Thanks, Katerina. I see you're leaving.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Anybody here on that?
Let me check the.
You can see here, it doesn't, no one seems to be stepping forward here. So we may.
Don't see anybody. Joseph, there you are.
Oh, yeah, I saw, okay, I thought it might be the current back here. Okay. Why don't you go ahead?
Okay. Thank you for the time. Excuse me. This is a petition to, it's actually a modification to an existing revocable consent. The original revocable consent was issued on or approved in April of 2017. And in that across the property to enclose it basically, but the fence is a 4-foot high fence, and it was done as a second fence. The thing about this building, there's a unique characteristic about this building, and that's that it has a stair to the cellar in front of the building. I don't know if you are able to see the documents.
Can you see some, can you share the screen and show us some, stuff on it? Do you have any?
Sorry, I'm not hearing you.
Do you have anything you can show us? Just to share the screen and show us some diagrams, pictures, etc.
Are you able to see the documents?
Not right now.
If you would like, I can share my screen with the documents that were provided on our agenda.
Yeah, why don't you do that?
That would be helpful.
Why don't you do that?
Okay. I don't know if that's possible to enlarge. Okay, perhaps you could go, okay, that's it.
What would you like me to show?
If you could go to the drawing T004.
You're gonna have to give me pages and
keep going. That's the one. Okay.
T004. Okay.
And if you could raise that up a little bit to see the entire page. Yeah. Okay. That's good right there. So the building has this stairway that goes down to the cellar in front of it. And so we need to enclose it. Every house on this block that has a fence has a fence that's 5 or 6 feet high. And what these photos show, this is basically almost a panoramic view of the street, are the nature of the streetscape, the height of each fence along the street. When you come to this house, which has a need for a higher fence, it's like a broken tooth. It has just a tiny little fence. So we're proposing, and if we could you flip to one of the, let's say I'm going to call it page number, say page number 2. Yeah, that's fine. So this is the existing facade as it exists. And you can see that on the properties on either side, there's a large tall fence here and a tall fence here. What we're proposing is just to bring that fence to a moderate height, not quite as high as the fence next to it, but to the height of the lower side, to be able to enclose that stair. The modification to the revocable consent is that one is the height of the fence. The other is that in the original modification, revocable consent, the fence went straight across. And in this case, the fence has to step back, because by putting the fence straight across, when you got inside that fence, the stairwell would be an open stairwell, which would be a hazardous condition. So what we're doing is, if you could go Down one more page, please, Bill. Okay, if you look at the top of this, that's the stairway. So when we come out for the revocable consent, we come out 1 foot 2 inches and build a fence across. And then when we get to the stair, along the stair, we cut back and go within the property line and then come out again for the actual entrance to the stair. So there'd be 2 doors. One brings you into the building, the other one brings you into this stair. Having that stair open or with a fence that's only 4 feet high, which is easily scalable, leaves this property open to vandalism, burglary, every other, it becomes a target because every other house on the block has got it is enclosed with a fence. And this becomes the open one. And it's become a problem with people throwing garbage into that place, or during COVID, it was certainly a problem with vagrants, people sleeping down there. And the issue is that once you get to the bottom of that stair, you're really hidden. And if somebody wanted to get into the house, they could work on that door, that basement door, and gain entry. So it's a matter of security, and it's also by putting the fence up at the height equal to what the surrounding properties are, it maintains the streetscape instead of being an outlier. If you could go to pages, what it would be, 5 and 6. Okay, that's one. You can see, actually go to the next, no, the one before that. That's 3. I'm sorry, it's the last page. It would be page 5. And you can see, in these large photographs, these are looking down the street. You could see all of the fences that run down the street. Every residence every building that's residential that has this type of fence. And what we're asking to do is to maintain that streetscape with this petition, this modification.
How high is your fence? How high is your fence going above what it is now?
Well, right now you only have a little fence. It would be 4 feet under the original modification. At this point, it's going to be 5'10". Most of the fences along this street on either side are above 6 feet. The one immediately to the right is 6'5" tall. The one to the left is 5'6" tall. So what we're trying to do is achieve a median height. We also changed the design of the fence so that it's more appropriate to the facade of the building. The original modification had a fence that would be more appropriate to, a brownstone that looked the way they did when they were built. This facade, and you can see it here in this sketch, you can see how the facade has been modified. It's no longer, it's a contemporary facade. It's no longer a traditional facade. And so what we've done is we've taken a cue from the fence to the right, or to the west, I'm sorry, the left to the west, and kind of refined the design a little bit to make it a little more delicate, but still in keeping with the contemporary design of the building.
Is any of the fence going beyond where your fences are now? I know that going.
No, actually, the fences that are there now, and I'm sorry that this is so small, but they're in line with the fences that are there now. The consent that was approved would put these fences in line with these other fences on either side. The those fences are, the adjacent fences are forward of the property line.
Okay. So see if I understand this. So you're gonna have the fence that's gonna be this, not gonna project that any further, but and by that door, it's gonna actually go in some from within the property line and then just come
That's
out.
correct.
at
The center of it, if you see this particular one, everything in red is in front of the property line. The black part of the fence is within the property line.
Right, but none of it goes beyond what has previously been approved, basically, right?
That's correct. It doesn't encroach any further than was already approved.
Okay.
And certainly not any further than the fences on either side, the adjacent fences.
Gotcha. Anything else?
Well, that's it. It's
Okay.
it's a pretty simple modification, but I think an important one both for the street and for the occupants.
Public comments? I don't see any members of the public. I don't know. Will, do you see any members of the public?
I don't, but if you're from the public and you want to comment on this application, look for the react icon on your device and press the raise hand button. Other than that, I just see Alita and Michelle.
That's what I see. Okay, so let's go to Alita.
Thanks, Chuck, and thank you for your presentation. I am still confused about how far onto the sidewalk this fence and proposed gate will be. I don't understand. It sounds like the fences on either side stick out further and you want to align this with those fences. I just don't know if, I gather it is extending beyond the property line right now, but I don't understand what you're trying to do.
Okay, there is no fence existing now that's outside the property line, but the adjacent fences are. So what we're proposing is to align our fence with the adjacent ones, not stick out any further.
So how far beyond the property line? First of all, well, let me just ask you, how far beyond the property line are those fences?
1 foot 2 inches.
Okay, so you want to move it out onto the public sidewalk, 1 foot 2 inches in order to maintain a line with the adjacent properties. Is that right?
That's correct. And the existing revocable consent allows that. What we're proposing to do is to now make the fences the same height or a similar height to the ones on either side and throughout the neighborhood, actually.
Thank you for clarifying. I'm really opposed to this because A, you want to push something out onto the sidewalk, and B, you want to create more of a fortress feel on the block. To me, and other people have expressed this as well, these fences and gates create a feeling of a barricade. They close off the street. It becomes a street that is not as welcoming and inviting to the public, to the pedestrians on the street, while everyone is barricaded behind these fences in their homes. Certainly there are locks that exist that should protect the basement door from anyone who wants to come in, as every other building in the city of New York has. And I'm sorry, I'm not being very articulate. It creates a feeling that's very off-putting to see fence after fence, and even more importantly, gate after gate after gate. It suggests that there is an enclave of people who are barricaded from the riffraff on the sidewalks, and I really object to that. The sidewalks belong to the public, and there should be a feeling of invitation to use the sidewalks, to be able to admire the homes and the windows and the architecture, and not to feel a stranger or to feel that you are not invited because homes are barricaded. 6 feet is tall. And just because the adjacent properties, and I never would have voted for those either, have 6 feet fences, to me is no reason. The hole in the tooth or the toothless mouth is not an explanation. I understand that that's what they want, but it's not necessarily an explanation for what they ought to have, given the public's interest and the increasingly greater numbers of the public who actually use the sidewalks. So that's, I am opposed. Thank you.
All right. I'd just like to point out that there already is an approved revocable consent to push the fence out 1 foot 2 inches to align with the other fences.
Okay, but not for the height
What-
and not for the gate, right?
That's already in existence. What we're proposing to do is actually push back the center of it because we have to protect the people from, falling into that stairway.
And
So-
I appreciate that, but you're asking for our consent to put up a gate in front of the other door, the basement door, and to increase the height of the fence. Am I misunderstanding? I don't want to misunderstand.
That's correct, but and because the streetscape that's there now, and I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but it already exists. And none of the other houses have stairs accessible from the sidewalk that go down into the cellars. This particular house has that.
I appreciate their interest in it, but I think given one family's interest and the interest of everyone else in the city and all of our visitors, that it is, to me, I don't accept it. And I'm sorry, I just don't. That the entire street is barricaded and blocked off by fences and gates is not an excuse to be able to do it on yet another house. It does create a very off-putting environment. It's not a welcoming street. There are towns on Long Island that do that. And it is not, for me, it's just not pleasant to be there. New York City is a paradise of access and walkability, but that makes it somewhat less pleasant. And so I can't approve it. I'm done. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay. Just a minute though. I understood, Mr. Panaccio, that the fence covering the door does not exceed the property line. So that's part of your plan, but as you showed in the red stuff goes out to 1 foot 2 inches, which
That's correct.
You already have approval to do it. I assume, and the other ones don't go out at all past the property line. Is that correct? The one in front of the door.
No, the two in front of the door will come out to align with the adjacent fences. The center that's not red, that's in black, will be within the property line because it has to protect that stairwell or someone that gets inside the fence from falling into the stairwell.
So what you're asking for is you've already got the consent to go out 1 foot 2 inches, right? You've got that. That's
on either side, yeah.
Essentially,
but again, please, the existing revocable consent already allows that fence to be out there. All we're saying is we're going to take the center of it and push it back and then raise it up adjacent to the other fences.
All right, I just want to make clear what you're doing. Okay. Michelle?
Joseph, is there an image in the slideshow that shows what is currently approved, but not what is currently built?
I could send you the drawing of the initial.
It's okay. No, I just want to make sure there wasn't something I could show.
Yeah. Well, let me first say it's an insufficient presentation. And I think that's why it's unclear, and that's why we're having this difficulty. For me, if you go back, I see this is the current existing condition of this house, this 177. This is what we're looking at now.
That's correct.
And the cellar is where in that picture, in this actual photograph, are your two side fences that are one foot plus out into the sidewalk? Where is that?
Okay. All right. Can you zoom back just a little bit so we can see the adjacent fences?
Yeah.
Okay.
So here's probably the easiest place to see it.
So now we're looking at the whole frontage of this house of 177. There is a door on the left.
Right.
Right. And that's where there is no fence.
Right.
Then there is a setback fence, and that looks like it's going into an areaway as well, but perhaps I'm not seeing it correctly.
Yeah, that
and
fence, I can explain it to you. That fence is above the stairway. And at the right side of that fence, there is a gate that lets you down into that stairway. So what we're proposing to do is there'd be no way to raise that fence within the property line. So there was an existing revocable consent that's in force that allows that whole fence to come out 1 foot 2 inches.
Now, wait a minute though, then if you're telling me that that's already in existence, then this is not a current picture.
That's a current picture. The revocable consent exists, but it was never acted upon.
Ah, so we have no way of seeing what that would look like. Okay.
Except
Now
for the drawings.
doorway, all right, hold it. On the doorway on the extreme right that has the higher fence, is that your property or is that
No,
the
that's,
property?
that is the adjacent property.
Okay, so on your property, where is the front door to the house?
There where there was no fence.
Okay, so there's no fence there. And what you're saying is the irrevocable trust that was approved a few years, and did you say in 2017?
Right.
Okay, I don't know if there's a statute of limitations to that or whatever. I don't ever recall this coming before me. If it had, I would have voted no, because I do not like to see extensions into the public way on private property. So I'm not even willing to accept that that is still, that does not have to be renewed, or, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what those rules are. But as I see it, we're talking about two issues. One is to extend the 1 foot, what was it, 1 foot 10, 1 foot 6, whatever it was. And the second issue is to raise the height of the fence. Now, I don't know this either. Maybe Chuck knows. I know in certain circumstances, there are height limitations to fences. There are height requirements for fences when you're talking about safety, like a fence on a terrace that would have to be, okay, oh, good research, Will. So what do we have here? Is that's the approval?
That's the approval from February 17th, 2016.
Okay, so you had 31 favor, 5 opposed. I would bet to say I was one of the opposed. And maybe Alita was too, but because I was on the board. But at any rate, it has never been built. I don't know what it means when something is out 7 years and hasn't been built, if that stands forever. I also don't know about the height, whether or not there are height restrictions for a fence. I understand your security concern. I also don't see effective in this presentation the new aesthetics that you're presenting. My recommendation would be to this committee to, I don't know if I can move to table since I've spoken, but maybe somebody else will, but just as maybe not so formally, but in a goodwill effort, I would suggest that the gentleman go back, get the pictures of the aesthetics of the fence. We find out about what a 7-year-old irrevocable thing is. We find out what a height limit is, and then we bring this back so that we can talk about it in a more intelligent way.
Okay. The aesthetics of the fence is shown on the drawing that's on the page now. Can you enlarge that a little bit? So
where's the aesthetic?
Okay. This is the fence to the west. That's an exact representation.
That has not been built.
And this is the fence we're proposing, the one that's in black and red here. The fence to the east is right here. That's the exact representation of what they are.
The red, black, red is what you are proposing.
That's correct.
Okay. If you go off the page to the right, where you have spokes, is that what is, what was, what might be? What is that? That's somebody else's.
That's
Next door.
existing.
Next door. There it
Yes,
is.
but it doesn't belong to you. It's somebody else's fence, correct?
That's correct. And what?
Okay, well, we're not talking about that. It's confusing the issue. Our issue now is whether or not what you're proposing is appropriate, whether the size is correct, and whether somehow that consent is still enforceable. So I'm not sure of any of it. And in order to give this a fair shake, I'd like if the gentleman would come back with the thorough answers of all those questions and imagery to support it, perhaps also with the streetscape. And then we can go from there. But otherwise, in this form, with the information we have, I won't support it. So thank you.
Is there any time limit on this? I mean, there's no time limit, I assume, on this. Do we,
I mean, technically speaking, we were given a set period of time to respond to every revocable consent application that's sent to us. DOT is very accommodating about it, but usually it needs, you know, the applicant needs to consent to extending the period of time. And
okay. So
you mean, excuse me, can I just clarify, Chuck? I don't understand. You mean we'll consent to the period of time that the community board makes a decision, or what the time is from 2017? Which do you mean?
no, so each revocable consent application, when we receive it from the DOT, is given a time period for us to respond, usually 30 days, often because the DOT's timing doesn't align with our full board timing. I tell them that we're going to actually get them the resolution right after our full board. That's the amount that they'll usually extend it. Otherwise, they need to hear from the applicant that they are willingly putting off that time period to work with us.
And do you not have any information about something that was passed by us in 2017? I mean, is that?
My understanding is what's presented by the applicant is that as long as they've been approved for revocable consent and they've been paying the fee for the revocable consent, they're entitled to the revocable consent. It's not like it needs to be built within a certain period of time.
Has it been paid for?
I think that's right. I think that's right, Will. Yeah.
And have you been paying for it, sir?
Yes.
Okay. All right. For me, I need more information. I'm not a fan of extensions. I understand the security concerns, and the aesthetics, but for me, it's not enough information. I'm going to vote no on it. If you take a vote, unless he's willing to come back.
Let me ask you, Mr. Kronicki, would you be willing to put this off until our next meeting in July, which is July 9th, and come back again? It's up to you, or you can have
perfectly happy to come back. Perhaps we can. I mean, the information is all here. There are photographs of the entire street and every house. I don't think that's the issue here. The issue is really that this house is an outlier. Like it or not, every house on this street has got a high fence.
Yes, but I don't know if there are height requirements. I mean, height limits on these fences. Just because something's been built doesn't mean it's compliant now or ever.
We can get some more information, and I think Michelle, however, suggestion makes some sense, but it's up to you.
I would say that, sorry, Chuck, generally the DOT would not refer us an application if it didn't comply with any regulations, like it was too tall.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right. But
because there are plan reviewers who review it before it's sent to us.
Right. Okay, well, it's at this point, Mr. Kronicki, we could put this over till next month, or if you want to have a vote tonight, we can vote.
Well, let's put it over.
Okay. We'll lay
Um,
this over. We'll lay this over to July. Make sure all the facts are there, and hopefully we can get some resolution on this.
okay, I believe that the existing consent went from 2017 to 2024. In any event, we'll put all that information
Yes,
together.
I think that would be helpful. Good, thank you.
And if you don't mind, please respond to the DOT plan team, just letting them know that you're accepting it being laid over to July so that they're not expecting a response from us by the end of the month.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Payne.
No problem.
Okay, all right. Let's go on to the next public hearing on 40 East 66th Street between Madison and Park, and this is a revocable consent to continue to maintain and use an existing vault under the south side of the roadway of East 66th Street, east of Madison, and under the east side of the roadway of Madison, south of East 66th Street. So do we have someone here for that revocable consent? If they're still here after the last presentation. Okay, Midtown Preservation, is that?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, why don't you tell us your name and
Okay, great. My name is Christina Redmond. I'm one of the architects here at Midtown Preservation Architecture and Engineering. I'm not quite sure if I need to share my screen or if you will pull up the submission package.
If
Should I
you
share
have it
my screen?
available, it's much better if you're the one controlling what you want to show
Okay.
than asking
Let
me
me see if I
to.
can do that here. Share. Sure,
Sharing
folks.
your desktop, not the.
Sorry about that. I'm not sure I'm able to accomplish this.
well, it's up there.
So you can see this,
Yeah, we can see
oh,
that.
great, okay. Yeah, so as I mentioned, I'm from Midtown Preservation Architecture and Engineering. So what we're presenting here, is really a portion of the property, below grade, which is, a sidewalk vault that, partially, projects beyond the curb line. So if you see in this drawing here, the area outlined in red is below the roadway. And it's a part of a cellar space that serves as storage area for the retail stores at the first floor. So the mission here is to rip up the asphalt, apply a waterproofing membrane to the existing vault structure, and then restore the asphalt. And that is basically what we're looking for approval here. The structure is existing. The building was built in about 1928. And so much of the structure, is a brick barrel vault structure. The tenants are experiencing some leaking into their storage areas due to a failing waterproofing membrane. So that's the purpose of the project. Sidewalk replacement work within the limits of the curb line will be performed as well. But that is not subject to the revocable consent division. But I just want to mention that's part of the project, and it will be a standard concrete sidewalk replacement per landmarks regulations and DOT regulations.
What is the space used for? Underneath storage, did you say?
Yes, the spaces are used by the commercial tenants for some storage of retail items. Stock items. It's essentially a warehouse for the commercial tenants.
Mm-hmm. And how long is the work supposed to take? Digging up the sidewalk and then fixing things?
So the work is going to be phased so that the entrances can be maintained. I would say, I believe it was about maybe 3 months, but you know, that's not specifically for the asphalt. That's the whole course of the project. Part of it will depend on the negotiations with the tenants, you know, the best times that work with them. And that has to be further developed with the contractor, but it does need to be phased, you know, in accordance to maintain pedestrian traffic and, you know, partial roadway closures. So it's done, you know, based on the DOT's approval of when they can close the roadway, the days, the times, etc. So it's done between the contractor and the permitting department with DOT, because they're really in tune to what's happening on the roadways. Are there any special events, etc. So all of that really is, it's not truly finalized until all the approvals are achieved, which are part of the revocable consent process.
Okay.
Additionally, it's also dependent on weather. So depending on what we get when we get the final DOT revocable consent approval and the various departments, you know, that revocable consent relies on, the bus division, etc. That completion date will affect the timeline of the project and the phasing of the project in an effort to, you know, complete the work during acceptable weather. Concrete, it can't really be done in the winter months. Ideally, you know, we like to perform the work, you know, well before freezing temperatures.
Okay, anyone from the public want to comment on this? I don't see anyone, but do you see anyone, Will?
I don't. There's not a whole lot of folks here, so if you are here to speak about this, just look for the react icon on your device and press the raise hand button. With that, I think it's just Michelle.
Michelle.
Yeah, thank you. So I have questions that I think maybe Chuck can answer. But first, let me just ask this woman. Sorry, I don't see your name though. So there,
Christina.
Christina. Okay. So this vault is under the sidewalk, and you have access to it from the commercial property of the building which it's under. Correct?
Correct. So once you're inside the stores, as you go towards the back of the stores, where their stock rooms are, they have stairs that go down to the cellar.
Okay.
Additionally,
And
there's a hatch. There's a sidewalk hatch, but that's really for emergency egress. It's not typically used by the commercial spaces.
so you're not asking in any way to extend any structure on the sidewalk level past the property line. This is all work that it's the building, it's the vault that affects the interior of the building, because if it's not properly maintained, you're getting flooding. Is that correct?
Correct. Just because of the age of the structure, they're getting leaking to the interior. All the structure is pretty much existing. So
right, I understand. So all you're asking, I just want to make sure I understand, and then I have a question for Chuck or anybody else who can answer. So all I understand is you are going to have access from the interior of the building, and you're going to put a waterproof membrane. You're going to replace whatever needs to be replaced to prevent leaking. That's the repair that's going to be done internally. And then when that is ready, is it then that you break the sidewalk, or does the sidewalk have to be broken when you do the entire repair?
Right. So just to be clear, let me go back to this page here. So if you look at this drawing here, this red outline is where the curb is. And this area, even this where this is squared off here, this whole area is covered with asphalt. Let me try to show the structure here. So in order to install the waterproofing to stop the leaking into the vault, they have to rip up the asphalt and they have to apply the waterproofing from the exterior.
So the asphalt has to be ripped open through the whole project.
It does, but they may not rip up both streets at the same time. So it may be, 66th Street at one time, and then they'll do Madison Avenue at another time. It's going to depend on traffic and how the DOT, allows the contractor to phase the job.
Okay, so I see that you have measurements here, but they're too small for me. So how many feet on 66 and how many feet on Madison?
So it extends beyond the curb line 1 foot on 66th Street. And it extends beyond the curb line. I'm sorry, this might be an older drawing. 5 foot 5.5 on Madison Avenue.
So that's a lot of excavation. That's going to be a significant impact on the traffic on Madison because you're breaking up 5 feet, whereas on the other, it's 1 foot or whatever.
Yeah, so in terms of excavation, it's not that far down from the top of the asphalt. So, I would say, it's at least maybe a foot of asphalt, maybe another foot of gravel. So in terms of excavating, it doesn't really need to go out that far because the depth of the excavation determines how far how far out you have to go. And because it's the roof of the structure, we're not going down to the footing. Like if you see here, this is the footing. We're not going all the way down to the footing. I'm sure if I can zoom in.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. My next question, I'm not inclined to deny you the ability to repair. I don't think we want to see leakage. We want to see water. Water causes a lot of damage. It'll undermine the integrity of the whole structure. So I'm inclined to support this. What I don't understand, and this is my ignorance about the parameters of a revocable trust. So I'm asking if Chuck can explain that to me, why this comes under that category is what I mean.
I think that because they're doing something, anything that goes beyond the property line, whether it's above or below ground, you have to get a revocable consent from DOT. That's
Whether it's underground or, okay, I thought that only applied to, all right, that answers that question.
Underground.
All right, okay, I got it.
And at one point in time, this area was not underneath the street, but when they made the streets wider, it became under the street. Like decades ago, the streets were narrower, so this was actually, under a sidewalk, and then they made the streets wider. So now the asphalt is above the roof, if that makes sense.
So you have to break the sidewalk as well.
We do, but because the sidewalk is within the line of the curb, and it's not the asphalt, that's not subject to revocable consent review.
Okay, all right, thank you very much, appreciate that. And thanks, Chuck.
Sure. Any further questions? So can we have a motion on this then? Go ahead, Michelle.
A move to approve as presented.
Okay, is there a second to that?
And I would just like to, if there is a second, I would just like to see in the whereases, that we just clarify, whereas the applicant is working with DOT for the appropriate,
blah,
blah, blah, about taking traffic into consideration, all that stuff, so that,
And Alita seconds. I don't know if that's the first, but we'll appreciate that. Okay. You want to take the roll again, Craig? This is our last vote, I think, at this point.
Yes. So it's me, Craig, Chuck, Alita, Gail, John McClement, Lori Boris, Michelle, Paul, Rita, Sebastian, Valerie.
Okay. Anyone else? Did we miss anyone? Okay. So if you want to vote for this, you don't have to do anything. If you vote yes, if you want to vote no or not, or abstain or not voting for cause, you should raise your hand. Okay. I think that passes unanimously. Thank you. And we should go, I think we should go now to see Colleen. Do you have anything you want to tell us at all from DOT? Any announcements?
Hey, Chuck, other than that, congestion pricing is on hold. That was,
I think we got that information.
yeah, I know. I mean, it's all over the news, but I mean, I have nothing to report. All is good on our end here at DOT.
Okay. Any old or new business? Rita has her hand up.
Thanks. And maybe Colleen, if you're still here. I saw in Queens there were posters on bus shelters, bus stop buildings, whatever you call those shelter things, something about bikes and asking bike riders to pay attention to pedestrians and not to ride on the sidewalks. And I think those would be enormously useful to have in our neighborhood. Just a reminder, maybe from the government that they, or somebody, that they ought to just be following the laws. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Valerie Mason.
Okay, hi. Two things. Number one, I had a question for Colleen. I sent out an email regarding that vandalized, I don't even know what you call it, map guide.
Yeah, it's our wayfinding sign, Valerie. I emailed my colleagues and we're still awaiting information on that. I think what it is that with a lot of these, structures, because it's electronic, we have to order parts. So I'm waiting to see what the issue is with that, and I'll let you know. I did send them an email again.
Okay,
we will get it fixed.
I appreciate that, but you
Sure.
guys put up the wood board so the rats wouldn't get inside it and start nesting. Now it's peeled away and now it's been graffitied. So it's just pretty disgusting, quite frankly.
I'll have them take a look at it to see what they can do to make it much better.
I appreciate that. And I know Andrew Fine wants to bring up the other piece of business, so I'll let him do it. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Yes, Andrew Fine.
Thanks again, Chuck. I hope my timing is correct, but I just wanted to briefly discuss the need to register e-bikes throughout the city of all types, whether it's pedal assist or high speed, throttle, you name it. We have a crisis going on our streets. Everybody knows it. Everybody's either been hit by an e-bike or sideswiped or had a near miss. We've had legislation in the city council for 2 years running now. Last year, we peaked at 34 out of 51 council members sponsoring to register all e-bikes. And this year, they renewed it. Everybody had to re-up. We're up to 31. We're probably projected to get to 35. And we're having a major problem with the city council actually even bringing this to a hearing when there were issues last year where there were 3 co-sponsors, not 31 or 34 or 35, but 3 that got a hearing in the city council. It's very similar to congestion pricing. It's the same foes, same resistance. The reality here is if you talk to 1,000 New Yorkers in the streets, 950 would tell you, we need to get this under control and we're sick of this. And what I would like to propose, I don't know if it would be handled tonight or at some other point in time, that there would be a resolution to support City Council Intro 0606, which was introduced by Bob Holden, and Assembly Bill 9092, which is very similar in the New York State Assembly. that would require all e-bikes to be registered. And if you want to go even further, there are bills like 9114 in the state assembly, which appropriately require inspection, insurance, licensing, and registration of all e-bikes, because everything that is motorized on the street that can go 20, 25, 30, 40 miles an hour, some of these e-bikes will go, need to be accountable, and they need to be safe. And we have at nycevsa.org, we have 750 members and climbing. We have 75 or 80 people that have been directly impacted. We have a member's family who's unfortunately their loved one was hit and killed by a city bike. Her name is Priscilla Loke. We are naming 0606 in her honor, and we'll be announcing that on June 20th. But what we, I don't know how the community board feels about this, but I think this is an urgent and pressing issue. We know that mopeds are a menace, and the NYC EVSA has been working with state legislators to do things like register mopeds and shop. That's actually just passed the Assembly and the State Senate. Lori, I'm sure you're very familiar with this legislation. Thank you very much to your son, who is awesome. But it's time. It's past time. Everybody knows it. I don't know how you can deny it at this point. If you get hit by an e-bike, the 74 documented cases that we have from our members that have been impacted by e-bikes, 71 of those are hit and runs. Only 3 people that hit one of our members and broke a collarbone, brain bleeds, plates in the head, paralysis. Only 3 stopped to actually take accountability for their actions. What we have is 71 out of 74 who got hit and got stuck with a bill. And unfortunately, the city, the Parks Department, I'll bring this up on the 13th at the Parks Committee, the Parks Department just unilaterally re-upped a pilot program that started on May 31st of 2023 for 1 year to allow e-bikes in the parks. There was no public input at the end of this pilot, which was 5 days ago. No public input, no call to CB to ask how you feel about it. So now we have e-bikes in the parks for another year. Everybody knows.
Andrew,
yes.
Hold a second, please.
So,
I think
to
we got
make the
the-
long
we
story
got the
short,
point.
thank you,
We got
Chuck,
the
is
point.
I would ask that we resolve that all e-bikes in New York should have a license plate and they should be registered. I won't ask for insurance inspection and everything else, but I would ask that of the community board, and I beg you to consider it for all of us that are trying to
But
avoid
Andrew,
injury by simply walking down the street.
We've already passed a resolution on this. Go back to July 2023. So I think we've already dealt with
Was that
this.
me?
Might have been. We did pass the resolution.
What do we have to do to actually advance this? Or do we need a resolution that requires insurance and inspection? I mean,
it's part of the resolution.
It's a question of, first of all, we're not taking any action today. We'd have to notice it and put it on the agenda for that. And the question is whether or not you need authority from the state legislature to do some of this stuff too. But we can discuss that a little further. Why don't we, I know we've had a couple other people who may want to comment on this. Michelle, you had your hand up first, then Sebastian.
You said Michelle first, then Sebastian?
Yeah, Michelle had her hand. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
okay, thank you. I'm not sure, you're very good at finding old resolutions, Craig. If you have that one, if you can
We'll
let
put
us
it in
know.
the chat already.
What, I'm sorry?
We'll put it in the chat already.
Oh, okay. So it basically is a resolution that talks about this. I'll see if I can, well, I can't read it while I'm talking, but the bottom line is this. even if we have a resolution, and I know there's a lot of opposition to licensing of any vehicle besides cars at this community board. I've tried to get bicycles licensed. Now we're talking about electric bikes. There's a lot of opposition to that. However, what we may be able to do that will not be contradictory or conflict with any past resolutions is, and we have to post it, I recognize that, but the resolution would be to pass, to support the bills. Not, in other words, not mention the licensing of the vehicles, but to say we support 606, we support blah blah blah. Those would be the resolutions, and I think the proper way to go about it, and I hope it could be on in the July meeting, and that would be to post it, because it has to be posted in the agenda to say that we're considering this, and then you have to attach the bills to the agenda so that everybody can read the bills. It's not enough to just say what it's for.
I think we get your point. I think we know how to administer these.
Okay, Craig, I wasn't challenging your ultimate knowledge. I was just
No,
outlining
it wasn't
what I
about
thought
knowledge.
would
I
be
think you were
good.
just being a little
So what I'm
condescending about how we could be
suggesting,
doing things.
what I think that's a perfectly appropriate thing, especially for reasons that you and I'll discuss privately. But aside from that, I will continue and sum up to say that that would be my suggestion. And then we can all read the bill, and we're not voting on something we had voted on before. And then hopefully we can maybe pass it or not, but at least it'll get a fair shake. Thank you.
Listen, I just want to call the committee's attention and people who hadn't been here. I'll just read the resolve. Community Board A calls for license plate, registration, and insurance requirements for e-bikes and mopeds. Further resolved, request laws requiring that all e-bikes and mopeds be registered before they are allowed to leave stores at which they are sold, and that further resolved that where violators of safety rules are in the course of their employment by a restaurant or delivery service, Community Board A calls for a penalty to be enforced against the business/service and not the operator. And further resolved, Community Board 8 calls for the immediate suspension of the pilot program that allows e-bikes to be operated within Central Park. So that was the resolution that Craig was alluding to, and and it covers obviously a wide variety of things. July 26, 2023. We could certainly put something on the agenda for next month and look look at those bills, and we'll see what the committee wants to do in the board. So let's see, there's some sorry, there's Sebastian one comment. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to move that we adjourn the meeting. We've had lots of great discussion. We can probably call it a wrap. Move.
That's a motion that I'm always willing to entertain. There's a second. I see Paul Crickler. Okay. All right. Without objection, I think we can say we are adjourned, and we thank everyone. And our next meeting is not the first Wednesday because of the July 4th holiday, but is July 9th. As Craig mentioned, one
Tuesday night.
Right. Okay. So thanks everyone. Appreciate it. And as always, thanks Will for his great technical assistance. Take care.